Tips with Toni. Tips with Toni. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Toni. Tips with Toni. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Toni. Woo.
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Toni podcast. I'm Toni Marinici, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I'm very excited for you to listen to this next interview with a good friend, Jamie. She is a colleague of mine. She's also a registered dietitian, and you may or may not already be following her because I post her stuff all of the time on my story because she's just such a valuable resource and just so aligned with what I teach, which is finding balance in your eating habits. And she is literally known on Instagram as the balanced dietitian. So definitely the balanced nutritionist. So go on Instagram and give her a follow. And Jamie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. I'm so excited to have you. So Jamie, the first question I always ask is to share who you are, what you do, and most importantly, why you do what you do.
Yes. So my name's Jamie. I'm a registered dietitian. I've been a dietitian since 2013. And it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of the way that I've gotten here is I've worked with so many different kind of populations of people over my first few years as dietitian, and then kind of paired with my own experiences with food and going through all of the diets myself and doing all of the things and finding my own balance with food and just seeing how much people struggle with wanting to just kind of live their life and eat food and be healthy. So those two pieces together kind of inspired me to start on social media and get going with all of that. So now that's my full-time thing is I run my social media account. I have a membership program for women finding balance with food. And yeah, that's kind of how I landed here. I never thought I'd be here, but I'm here now and I love it.
Yeah, it's so rewarding, right?
Yeah, it's the best.
I love it. I love it so much. So let's dive into kind of like you mentioned, even you yourself have. Sorry, of course, my cat comes into the screen. Come on, Chloe. All right. You guys can't see if you're listening, but if you're watching the YouTube video, you got Chloe. Chloe decided to make an appearance today. But so one thing you do really well is you help people kind of find that balance, and one thing you do well too is like, you don't kind of make people feel bad for trying certain diets. You really just you teach, like there's a lot of accounts out there that like put stuff down, but don't educate. Right. Mm-hmm. And you do a really good job of just like educating, it's like you mention things that maybe someone's doing that might be problematic, but you spend a lot of time teaching and educating. And I find that so valuable. So what would you say kind of usually inspires your post? Is it conversations with clients? Is it kind of stuff you've went through before? Where do you get the inspiration to come out with all this educational content?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from things that I struggled with myself when I was younger, for sure. Like the things that my clients struggle with, I feel like it's exactly what I struggled with in like my late teens, early 20s, even right before I became a dietitian. So that's part of it. And then a lot of inspiration comes from DMs I get, comments I get, the biggest questions that I get over and over and over again. I try to make content around that.
So let's dive into those. If you don't, I feel like I'm putting you on the spot, but what are the most common questions that you get?
I think I get lots of diet questions, like lots of like fear around carbs and recently, actually, I know this is like a hot topic in the last year or so for sure, but the last like month or so, I feel like I've gotten a million intermittent fasting questions. So I've been getting that a lot. I get a lot of emotional eating questions, things like that. Even just simple questions like, how do I lose weight? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to lose weight if I can't follow, or if I shouldn't follow a specific diet, how am I supposed to, be healthy? That kind of thing.
Yeah. And so I get those questions too. How do you answer them? Because I always feel like I need a bazillion other questions with their question, and then they get frustrated. But I don't know you. I don't. You just popped into my messages. I have no clue about your relationship with food. I have no clue about your diet history. I have no clue if you have any medical conditions. I don't think people recognize that there's just so much more to just answering one question.
Yeah, I feel like you just summed it up. And I think that's probably the best thing that anyone can take from listening to those types of questions is everyone is so different. There are what I like to call best practices when it comes to nutrition. I'm sure you have those too, but everyone's different, and it's your relationship with food matters, your goals matter, your health history matters. There's so many different pieces. So yeah, it's hard to answer those questions. I try to be as helpful as I can in DMs, but there's only so much you can do. So I try to create lots of content around it.
Yeah, I know. That makes sense. Yeah, no, guys, if you're not following her, go follow her. It's the.balance.nutritionist, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's so good. So, let's talk about I think there's two trains of thought, right? And I don't know what your thoughts are with intuitive eating versus tracking. And I tend to take a more neutral approach. I think it depends on the individual, but I don't want that to, say what you feel. One thing that I think is important is that I do believe tracking should be some sort of starting point for someone, because I think it helps bring awareness. So how can someone become aware of their food choices without it being obsessive?
Yeah, I would consider myself exactly the same. I call myself a middle grounder because I think there's a huge gray area for sure. So and I'm not anti-tracking either. I think that it can be really helpful when you're building new habits, just purely for building awareness. I like to use tracking as you're just building awareness around your habits. It's not to be used as a restrictive tool, or I don't think it should be used as a restrictive tool. So I think the biggest thing with not becoming obsessive around it is using it in that way. Not, oh, I ate this, so I can't have this for dinner, but just oh, I was super hungry at dinner. Let me look at why. How did the rest of my day go? Were there any other factors that influenced that? And then you can just take that information and use it as you grow and get better.
Yeah, definitely. What would you say are the signs that maybe tracking for someone might be problematic?
I think if it's tough. I think if it's building any feelings of guilt or shame, or making any of that worse, or making you feel bad about making certain choices, or if you're looking back at your food log and feeling really negatively about it, I think those can be things. But I also think that that's why it's so helpful to have support too, because you can have someone work through that with you.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, no, definitely. I think having a sounding board is one part. And then also obviously an expert in the field, or working with a registered dietitian, they're going to be able to see things that you probably don't even say or recognize. Right. Those cravings at 2-3 o'clock. It's that's probably because of what your breakfast was, or what it wasn't, or
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's nothing to feel bad about. It's giving you information.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay. So what if someone really, maybe they are fed up with tracking, or it is becoming obsessive or problematic? How can someone be a mindful eater without tracking their food?
Oh, that's a good question. And I think there's lots of pieces to it for sure. But I think even if you're not tracking, you can still be working on building good habits, whether maybe for you that means just eating consistently. And even that can contribute to being a more mindful eater, because when you're going too long without eating, when you're skipping meals, when you're missing that basic stuff, you can't eat mindfully when you are starving, Mm-hmm. So I think just focusing on habits versus tracking you can work on that, without tracking anything, just having those simple habits in place, or adding more veggies, or slowing down at your meals, or that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't think enough people prioritize 3 meals a day. I don't really believe in hard rules or truths, but I feel 99% of the time I'm recommending 3 meals a day.
Yeah, I totally agree. I agree.
What are the benefits to that? Like, I'm glad you agree with me. Let's talk. Let's let the listeners know why that's important.
I think the very first thing that it does, and people will argue this, but I'm with you. I have had, I want to say, very close to zero clients who don't do best, who don't feel their best, get the best results, get the best outcomes from incorporating breakfast. I've had people who they're like, I will never be a breakfast eater, who it changes their life, which is, it sounds dramatic, but it's true. Right. But I think it just sets you up for a good day. And it also sets you up to have stable blood sugars throughout the day too, which I think is such a huge underrated piece of like cravings and hunger control and all that.
Definitely. And so to clarify, guys, your breakfast doesn't necessarily need to be the second you wake up. But so like, maybe let's speak to that a little bit so that the listeners are like, no way, I'm not hungry at all in the morning. Like there's not a chance I'm going to eat it. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think one of the best things that you can do is start really paying attention to when you're hungry, and that's when you eat. And if you've been dieting for a long time, it sometimes takes a little bit of structure to like get those hunger cues back. But in general, you can eat when you're like, some mornings I wake up and I'm starving and I eat breakfast at 7:30. Some mornings I eat breakfast at like 10. Yeah. And I think both can work, because if you're listening to your body, if you're going with what your body is telling you to do. But if you're not used to eating breakfast and then you eat lunch, and the reason you remembered to eat lunch is because you're now starving. Yeah. That's a good, indicator that there's probably like a place in between those times that you should be eating something.
Definitely. I love that. So one thing that I probably should have asked earlier when we were on the topic of like creating your social media account, but it just came to me, was like, there's so much misinformation out there. So the amount of questions that you get in your DMs and stuff, I'm sure you're creating content around that, but I'm sure you're also like seeing things on social media and being like, oh, what is that? Why is that there? What are some of those common things that you see that,
oh my gosh, they're so bad.
I know.
They're so bad. Especially Instagram can be bad sometimes, but I'm also on TikTok, and oh my gosh,
TikTok is terrible. I don't know if I have to follow you on TikTok. I don't know if I'm following you. I gotta look it up. But yeah, guys, listen, when I say follow, I've said this like a bazillion times. So if you're new to the podcast, welcome. If you've been a long time listener, like, thanks for returning. If you've heard me, I've said it 1,000 times, like, unfollow accounts that are not serving you and follow accounts that embrace this mindset. And your relationship with food, you could do nothing else but follow really positive, body neutral accounts, and you're going to find so much growth in just the way that you think about things. Like, it's so powerful. So yeah, TikTok though is, it's real problematic.
It's really problematic. And so if you're on TikTok, I mean, be super careful about who you're listening to, because there are huge accounts on there that are just like fear mongering. Awful. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, also too, like, for just as a reminder for those, like, just because someone has a lot of followers does not mean that they are legally even able to give out nutrition advice. I saw a dentist giving out nutrition advice, and it's like, there's a lot of bad. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people who have just maybe lost weight themselves or things like that, like promoting really restrictive, really like, just really terrible things. I saw some kind of crazy thing on TikTok, I think yesterday, that I was like drinking like 2 gallons of something. I don't know what it was. It was awful. And I was like, there should be better regulation of this. So you really have exactly what you're saying. You have to clean up your feed.
Yeah. Why do you think people are so like easily persuaded by stuff like that?
I think a lot of it is because we never learn how to eat. That's such a big piece of it. I mean, I know that I didn't until I went to school to become a dietitian. I certainly, there's very little, when you're growing up, there's no good education around just how to eat, how to put together a balanced plate, how often you should be eating, even just like myth busting so that so that you know kind of the truths from the craziness. So I think that's part of it. And also just the fact that we're so, I think it's getting better slowly, but I know that I grew up around so many diets, and it skews your idea of what nutrition is so hugely about like what weight you should be at and what you should be eating and how you should feel about food. It skews everything.
Yeah, I think so too. I think also that might be why, I don't know, what are your thoughts on like why someone might be so hesitant to reach out for help with a dietitian? Do they like think that we're the food police, or do they think that we're going to actually teach them how not to diet and they're like unsure of how that would be because that's all they've ever known?
I think it's both.
I'm like, guys, help me understand. I just like want to know, like, why are we your last resort? Like, why are we when you hit rock bottom? Like, why can't we be the first person that saves you? Like the clients, I have a client right now in the program who is 19. She is, I mean, an old soul. Like you would think she's so much older, but like, and I've worked with 18-year-olds as well. Like that's the youngest I'll go though, because it's for adults. But like the point is that these girls that are doing this when they're in college are saving themselves so many years of frustration.
Yeah.
So many years. Like their whole life, they've only lived like a quarter of their life. They have 3/4 of their life to live it in food freedom. It's just like so crazy that people wait till the last resort to get help.
I had one of my most favorite clients that I worked with. She was in her late 60s and had dieted literally her whole life, had calorie counted forever. And I remember she cried on our second call because she was like, this is the first time I can remember in so many years that I'm not hungry, that I'm not like forcing myself not to eat because I want to lose weight or whatever. And I feel like that's something to think about. Like, do you want to be in your late 60s, early 70s? I've heard of 80-something-year-olds dieting. Like, do you want that to be like your life? And,
No, and it's really sad because I do feel like the majority of women and men too, they're just not vocal about it. So I'm going to put men in there. But most people spend their whole lives trying to be a smaller size. And therefore it's stealing their joy from anything. So it's like they can be happy and they can accomplish things, but in the back of their mind, it's like, but only if I was 5 pounds lighter or 10 pounds lighter or down this pant size, or only if I look different, and it's so obsessive and it never goes away. But what we're trying to get you guys to understand, if you're listening, is just, you can heal that and you don't have to stay stuck there. There's so much more to life than worrying about what you look like.
Yeah. Yes to all of that.
Yeah. So, okay. So, anything else we didn't talk about that you think it would be helpful for the listeners to learn or know?
I think
I'm going to go. I'm going to look. No, go. You go. I want to look through your more recent. I haven't seen, I don't know why. Sometimes Instagram is weird. Like sometimes you'll be like all over my feed and I'm like, yes. And then I feel like I haven't seen you in a bit on my feed. So I'm going to go back. Oh, sorry. There's construction in the back. I just had a panic. Oh no, it is inside my building. Okay. So we're going to have to press pause because there's a fire alarm and I think I need to get outside.
Okay.
All right, we're back. You guys don't know that we left, but you did hear my fire alarm went off and it caused me to panic slightly. Most people, you get out when there's a fire alarm. I tried to get my cats in their carrier because obviously they're my priority and they weren't having it. So I wasn't going to leave my building without them. I called my boyfriend. He's like, it's a false alarm. I'm like, how do you know? Why didn't they email us? I checked my email. They emailed us. It was a false alarm. But I did come to a little bit of a panic mode that's never happened before. And of course, I'm not going to leave my cats. I would literally, oh my God, it was terrible. But anyways, we're back. We are back. Jamie, thank you for being patient.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, we were going to wrap up, but then I was like scrolling through your Instagram and I don't know, were you about to say something before the fire alarm went off? Do you remember?
Yeah. The only thing I was going to say, I think you had asked like, what is something that like we haven't touched on? I think I was just going to say, I think something that's super helpful to think about when you're taking in like social media messages is that there are lots of extreme views on food freedom, weight loss, and just to know that everybody is super different and it's okay to kind of have a place that's a little bit more flexible. You don't have to take a super extreme approach, because I think that can be almost more harmful sometimes.
Totally. And at the end of the day, you need to find what works best for you. And so when we say you don't need to live in the extremes, you really don't. At the same time, you need to figure out what your definition of your balance is. You know, for some people, balance is, you know, having a little bit of chocolate every day, whereas for other people, balance is having it once a week or something. You know, like that's different. It's really different, you know, so you have to figure out what works best for you. I think that's a really good point for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
You do a lot of great Instagram captions and posts about navigating the weekends or like bouncing back from a weekend. What kind of mindset? Because I do feel like most people probably struggle with consistency, and where they tend to be quote unquote really good Monday through Friday, and then like kind of feel like they screwed up over the weekend and they have to start again on Monday. How does someone break that cycle? And what are some mindset shifts that someone would need to have to be successful?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for the weekends, one of the best things that you can at least practice, like saying to yourself, is one food decision doesn't have to influence the rest of my food decisions for the day. That we have so many opportunities, especially when you're talking weekends, to make food decisions that align with your goals, that make you feel good. So remembering that when we're talking balance, it really is big picture, what your whole week looks like, what your whole month looks like, what your whole life looks like. Mm-hmm. And so I think remembering that is helpful, because that's what I see happen most often is it's like Thursday night hits or Friday night hits, and then it's like a downward spiral from there until Monday morning.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's such a good point. You have to think of it every moment you have a choice. At the same time, that one choice doesn't mean so much. Like you could always change your choices as the day goes on. So I love that. So where can people find you? Could talk a little bit more about your membership. What's involved in your membership if someone wanted to work with you?
Yeah. So my membership is, it's a step-by-step self-paced membership. So I have what I call the Balanced Life Method. It's self-paced modules where I go through literally everything you need to know, from building a balanced plate to improving your mindset to, you know, reading a food label. I cover all of the things. And then it also has lots of support. So there are live calls, there's a community. So it's a nice place to go. I actually had someone join recently who was like, I'm intimidated by one-on-one. And I thought this would be a good option. So I think it's nice. It's the community is amazing. It's for women. I should mention it's for women. But it's just such a nice place for women who are working towards the same goals. Most women in my program are looking to have more balance with food, maybe have some weight loss or fat loss goals. So yeah.
That's awesome. So how would someone learn more about that if they wanted to join?
Yeah. So you could go to my Instagram, The Balanced Nutritionist. I have a link in my bio. There's a link, but I don't know what the link is off the top of my head, so I'm not going to give it to you. But you can find it in my Instagram.
I will put it in the show notes. I'll put it in the show notes here. Yeah, I got it. It's thebalancednutritionist.mykajabi.com.
Yeah,
Balanced
awesome.
Life. Yeah. I will definitely put it there. I'll put it in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here. This is great, guys. If you're not following her on social, you need to follow Jamie on social media. Like, she's so good. I don't think I'm following you on TikTok, so I'm about to go do that when we hop off. But yeah, today is one of those days. I just dropped my mic. Today is one of those days. Technology is not really, the fire alarm. Things have been weird. But hopefully there wasn't too many interruptions and you got through this episode learning something new. If you did learn something new, take a screenshot of it. Tag me, tag Jamie, share with us what your biggest takeaway was, share it with a friend. We have the same mission. We just want you to live a happy and healthy life, not obsessing over food, not obsessing about what you look like, just being proud of who you are and where you're at and still making progress every day, because we're never done. We're never done learning. We're never done trying. So help us spread this message. All right. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, definitely hit that subscribe button. A new episode comes out every Tuesday and Thursday. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I'm Toni Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.